Hello, what's up? We're building this great startup, using technology, AI, ML, buzzword, algorithm, blockchain, disruption, ICO, blockchain. You're looking for a designer. Do you have anyone in mind? Oh, we have tons of designer, UX designer, interaction designer, product designer, UI designer, web designer, type designer, icon designer, motion designer, character designer. Very complicated. Is there something easier? Understands UX, who could do UI, who could also take our social media. I mean, these days social media is so obvious, right? And obviously, if you have to design pamphlets and the conferences and the events and stuff like that. Try that again. Oh, okay. Then UI UX designer. Bye.
There are tons of design titles out there, but to make sense of them, we'll have to look at their brief history. Don't worry, we're not going to get into too much details, just enough to get us the understanding we require to make sense of all these design titles. It's hard to trace the origin of the practice we today call design. Many of the mental models, practices, and first principles that we use are inherited from a variety of industries and fields of studies. There's no one single origin of design. If you look at Gestalt's theory, you will realize that the first principles that painters work with and visual communication designers work with are essentially the same. In fact, this brings us to the most common and maybe the most visible title in design, graphic design, or the larger umbrella under which it sits, which is visual communication design. The umbrella of visual communication design would include things like type design, icon design, graphic design, motion design, and tons of other fields. Graphic design and visual communication design inherit a lot from media, advertisement, and marketing industries. Maybe because for the large part of the history, they evolved together. We designers also love talking about aesthetics, usability, cultural values, social values, behavior. In fact, that's not new to us. We inherit those practices from industrial designers who inherited it from architects. Maybe because so many of the early industrial designers were also architects. Industrial design is the practice of creating products that can be mass-produced and can satisfy a variety of use cases without creating too many variations. We see the rise of industrial design with the rise of industrial age. This is where we get the standardized phone, the standardized equipment in the house, the standardized kitchen set, and all those variety of products. The physical products that we often interact with are designed by industrial designers. One of the most popular industrial designers that you're likely to know is Jonathan Ive of Apple. He's been behind some of the most iconic products from Apple, including the iPod and the iPhone. A design YouTuber talking about Apple. How cliched is that? But I run ahead of myself. We'll come back to Apple worship in a little bit. But with the rise of industrial age, we must also talk about the rise of technology and eventually the rise of computers and personal computers. And that naturally brings us to another field of practitioners that we share a lot in common with, and that is engineers. A lot of concepts that we use today were in fact invented by engineers. One of the key technologies that made personal computers possible was graphical user interface. We see the first example of GUI with Sketchpad and Lightpen. At that time, that was revolutionary.
It's at a desired location, and we press the button to command the computer to draw a line. It will draw a line from this position where I am now to any subsequent position of my light pen. This is much like a rubber band stuck on two pins. One is nailed on the screen here, and the other is at my light pen.
And later on, Xerox would go on to build mouse, and Apple will release it to the masses.
There's Don Andrews' hand in Menlo Park, and in a second we'll see the screen that he's working and the way the tracking spot moves in conjunction with movements of that mouse. I don't know why we call it a mouse. Sometimes I apologize. It started that way, and we never did change it.
And who do you think designed graphical user interface? User interface designers, or UI designers in short. This concept of user interface would make this powerful technology more accessible to masses and more useful. Usability. Another subject that we think we designers talk about, but way before designers, engineers used to talk about it in terms of usability engineering, and before them the industrial designers, and before them the architects. Around this time, we'll see the rise of HCI, or human-computer interactions. There's a vast field of theory and practice both. This new line of thinking that would focus not only on the interface, but the interaction between the user and the interface or the system. This line of thinking is the mother of all modern titles in design. With computers came the internet. With the internet came the World Wide Web. And with web came the web designers. As the name suggests, they design websites. But most web designers eventually evolved to prefer the term user interface designers, because nowadays just designing a website is not enough. You have to think about everything from social media to the native apps. And during this time of the rise of connectivity with the internet, we'll see rise of a new paradigm in HCI, user experience design. You can debate endlessly the theoretical differences between an interaction designer and a UX designer. To oversimplify, as YouTube tradition is, interaction designers like to think of interaction as the central focus and leverage of their design, and they have practices and frameworks like goal-oriented design. Versus user experience designer who exclusively think about their goals. Both interaction and UX designers work on very similar problem statements. In practice, their methodologies will be hard to separate. They both employ research, prototyping, testing, and tons of common tools. Both take design beyond the realms of user interface and talk about a larger view, a larger world, an environment where the user exists. It's an acknowledgement that user and the interfaces don't exist in isolation. Don Norman, the writer of the book Design of Everyday Things, is often credited with coining the term user experience design.
We said the experience of using these computers is weak. The experience, when you first discover it, when you see it in the store, when you buy it, when you, can't fit it into the car. It's in this great big box. It doesn't fit into the car. And when you finally do get it home, opening the box up and, it looks scary. I don't know if I dare put this computer together. All of that is user experience. It's everything that touches upon your experience with the product, and it may not even be near the product. It may be when you're telling somebody else about it. Today, that term has been horribly misused. It's used by people to say, I'm a user experience designer. I design websites or I design apps. And they have no clues to what they're doing. And they think the experience is that simple device, the website or the app or who knows what. No. It's everything. It's the way you experience the world. It's the way you experience your life. It's the way you experience the service.
Guess where he was working when he coined that term? Apple. I know, we can't escape Apple. And we literally can't, because the next thing we're going to talk about, Apple had major hands in that. The rise of actual multi-touch, modern smartphones.
So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device.
iPhone launch was culmination of a lot of technological developments, and it will immediately bring about the era of hyperconnectivity. Not the old world of where your one computer was connected with some wired connection and had to sing certain songs to get to the internet, but a world where internet is in the air. And here we must acknowledge the feedback loop that business, technology, and user behavior create together. They feed into each other. New technology allows for new businesses to exist, new business models to emerge. For example, something like Uber would not be possible 30, 40 years ago because the GPS and hyperconnectivity that we require for it was just not there. Welcome to the world of startups. Startups and technology would take over the world and cause disruption. Technology is said to be eating the world, and there's a reason for it. I mean, you only need to look at Apple, the greatest, the holiest, the most glorious, and let's take another example. WhatsApp. When WhatsApp was acquired, it was valued at $1 billion, and it had only 50 people on their team. And with startup would come a new age of thinking in technology and how to build these technologies, the agile movement and bunch of other movements. These business models wanted to move fast. They wanted to have leverage and advantage of technology like it was never there before. So far, companies were just hiring some combination of UX/UI/graphic designer/interaction designer, and various of those titles to fulfill all these different roles and specialities. But with startups will come this new need of businesses, a new demand from the market, someone who could modify and learn their practices and their approach based on the problem at hand. Someone who could not look at products as different from services and could understand user experience in terms of market productization, in terms of market realities, in terms of business. This unicorn designer who will have understanding and ability to change into any sort of designer that is required. And the market will give them these unicorns. Meet product designers. What we mean by that product is a system or a unit that exists in market that a customer can purchase and consume or use. Which means this video is also a product because they're in the YouTube market and you are consuming it. There are two key differences than previous paradigms of designers that we have seen before versus the product designer. A product designer can combine the holistic approach of UX and interaction design and with the craft that goes into visual communication and interface design. The second biggest difference, and maybe the biggest difference, when you're a product designer, you're also expected to align user goals with business goals. So that you tell amazing stories and all, but companies out there are not watching this video, right? And they are using these titles as and when they please. So how do I make sense of these titles when I'm applying for jobs out there? Can we talk something practical? First of all, calm down. Second of all, for sure will do right now. That is true. Every company will use these titles differently. Often they will use combinations which suits their business needs and the way their team is structured. And even worse, at times companies will just not have time or a hiring manager who understands design and they will just copy paste somebody else's job description. Yep, that happens. So what do you do? Except go mad. Well, it's really simple. First thing, ignore the title. What you want to do is scroll down to the job description and look at what kind of requirements they're talking about. The requirements will often give you a better idea of what kind of skill set or what kind of designer the organization is looking for. But it's possible that it does not contain all the details, or it's possible that it lists every skill under the sun.
Product designer, UI designer, web designer, type designer, icon designer, motion designer, character designer.
In that case, you can assume that this was copy pasted from somewhere else and just reach out to the hiring manager, reach out to the HR and ask them that question. And if you don't get a straightforward answer, modify the question and ask, what are the first 3 projects that I will get to work on if I get hired in this role? Last but not the least, you want to take all these titles and remove the ER part and just turn them into skill set. All these can be your skill set and you don't have to be one specific kind of designer. In fact, as you evolve in your design career, you will pick more and more of these skills with various projects to varying degrees. My hypothesis is that in the future, we're going to see a new breed of designers who are makers/designers, who just don't design the specification, but also make things. With the rise of YouTube-based education where you can practically learn anything, including coding or robotics, and the rise of no-code tools that make it far easier than it was ever before to make many functionalities without needing you to know how to code or to get into server management and all of that jazz. You know what? We have a chance of naming these designers. What should we call them? Makers/designers? Designers? Dakers? We should find a terrible name before somebody else named them terribly, right? I've tried to cover all major titles in this video. If there's a specific title that you're confused about or you would like to know more about, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.